All right, figured I'd get back to this. It's been a bit. This is in Ash Logos, and this is in pursuant of Clarity podcast number 6, episode 6, on nobility and magnanimity. Boy, I actually said that. Usually I get those twisted up for some reason. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 6 of In Pursuit of Clarity. I'm titling this one On Nobility and Magnanimity. You've probably heard me use the phrase Indo-European often, and you'll hear it just as often in the future. I make such frequent use of the term because it's one of the best umbrella labels for the family of peoples and cultures that have sprung from a singular root over the millennia. Ancient Greece, India, Persia, and the more recent Celtic and Latin and Germanic peoples are all genetic and cultural and linguistic cousins. Prior to the post-World War II period, in which academia in the US and beyond was essentially hijacked, and the cultural pendulum swung to the polar opposite extreme of the philosophy and ideology of the defeated National Socialists in Germany, this genetic lineage was almost universally referred to as Aryan. The root of this word is Arya, which means noble. And what I've always found fascinating about this title was that it wasn't self-assigned, but rather bestowed on those horseback-mounted invaders that swept into India around 2000 BC by the subjugated natives of the region. So stop to consider this. A conquered people took to referring those who conquered and ruled them with a positive descriptive label. I've always considered this extremely important and telling, and something we need to understand and embrace, a vital piece of our heritage we should be seeking to emulate. These conquering peoples weren't wantonly cruel. They didn't seek to mistreat or act unjustly or greedily, according to all surviving accounts. Rulership was always seen as a responsibility, not a green light to act as malicious slave master, or a means to live in leisure through exploitation. The further back one goes in the historical record, the more profoundly it seems as if malevolence wasn't even a part of our vocabulary. These Arya could certainly be stern or harsh if the situation demanded it, and with themselves most of all. Their prowess on the battlefield was quite literally unrivaled throughout the historical record, displaying almost unbelievable dominance over all they encountered along the way. But justice was a concept they seemed to hold near and dear, and acting unjustly, in the broadest sense of the word, especially for personal gain or any other petty motive, seemed wholly foreign to them. I believe this is the path forward. We need to understand our roots and traditions and embrace this nobility of character, this unique magnanimity and genuineness of mind and spirit, our historical conception of justice in its broadest sense. You'll notice when a man of true ability, wisdom, and intellect communicates with somebody on the other end of the spectrum, you'll often hear an easy confidence, a calm tone, and a sense of fair play in how he seeks to converse. He doesn't seek to strawman their arguments or make some exaggerated caricature of their ideas so that he might knock them down with greater ease or make his opponent look foolish. In fact, you'll often hear him do the opposite, even going to great lengths to help his counterpart by restating the argument they're attempting to make in a more clear and refined and accurate manner. When a man is genuinely seeking truth, as opposed to seeking to win some dialectical contest, he wants all counter-arguments to his own to be as strong as possible, and to be communicated as clearly as possible. He wants his every idea to be tested by fire, either be destroyed or come out stronger on the other side. Those who operate this way are able to far more quickly burn off their false notions and faulty ideas, and significantly increase their pace in their search for the real and the true. Acting otherwise would be doing yourself a disservice, stunting your growth and the evolution of your ideas and understanding of the world. I believe our ancestors knew this, innately and instinctively. They were guided by healthier ideas and traditions that allowed them to be more robust and efficient human beings. I can't help but feel we're losing much of this, and it's disturbing. When I hear someone use racial slurs, or shouting to everyone that'll listen about how inferior other peoples are and how superior they are, I can't help but cringe a bit. I'd contend that the most objectively superior men in recorded history have never once felt the need to proclaim this fact from the rooftops, or remind everyone else around them just how much they pale in comparison. And in fact, quite the opposite. The greatest thinkers and sages we've produced have tended to be the most modest and self-effacing, the most able to see the best in others and recognize their own faults. Now, there's a big caveat here. This type of mentality has led to some of our greatest failures and blunders as a collective, and can so easily be misused and abused by dishonest actors, causing us to make short-sighted decisions out of kindness and goodwill towards others that have devastating ramifications for ourselves and future generations. So it must always be paired with a sternness and stoicism and a far-sighted judgment. But this is a digression. The point here is that we need to recognize and respect just how impressive this unique trait is. An objective reading of history shows us to be very much the opposite of the cruel and unjust tyrant that the subversive element has so aggressively attempted to portray. Those who want our culture destroyed and our memory eradicated have created this caricature of the Klansman throwing a chair on Jerry Springer as the brand, as the visual that pops into the head of many when they think of an individual of a European background with any type of racial awareness or race consciousness, or any desire to preserve their heritage or culture. Not Carl Jung, or Charles Lindbergh, or Ezra Pound, or someone that loves deeply all that is best and brightest within us, but rather some slack-jawed, dead-eyed, fat man filled with hate, ranting and raving against darkies. This toxicity of brand is what keeps so many unthinking and deeply indoctrinated Americans and Europeans in line, creating the conditions and framework causing them to adopt and parrot the worldview and talking points of those that seek their destruction. This subversive cultural element has attempted to paint a mental picture in which wealth, sophistication, the intellectuals and serious thinkers are on one side, and angry, emotional, ignorant reactionaries are on the other. And they've done such an incredible job at creating this framework that they've essentially managed to invert our culture, our understanding of ourselves and our history and our values, and all of this within a relatively short period of time. Most people don't care enough about these issues, or even see the need to care enough to dig deeply, to give them concerted thought and consideration. And those who don't do these things are easy prey for this branding mechanism. We all want to wear the best-looking badges, to dress ourselves in attractive clothing, so we're naturally drawn to the most broadly appealing brand, just as we reject the least appealing. To carry the analogy further, it's a sad truth that the average person is usually willing to pay more for something created with inferior materials and workmanship if the brand name is seen as more attractive, because it's the latter we've been taught to value. People generally buy fancy and expensive things to be seen as slightly more fancy and valuable people, not solely because the item itself is of higher quality. This creates a scenario in which one doesn't need to create worthwhile products as much as market them shrewdly and manipulate efficiently. But this topic is far more important than the issue of branding. We need to relearn who we are and re-embrace our traditions, not solely to win the optics war, or more efficiently win hearts and minds, but rather to be true to ourselves and live happier and healthier lives. We live in a world largely dominated by those who hate us, and I no longer believe this sentence or idea requires any qualifications or caveats. It's simply an objective truth. I've recognized that they make use of our knowledge of this fact as a tool and weapon against us, and that, broadly speaking, they're trying to stoke anger and hatred of the most extreme sort to better contain and marginalize the truths they most fear. When a man is passionately angry and hateful, he loses the calm and cool rationality that allows for deep thought, for clear and effective communication. He's bursting with energy at the injustice he feels, and he feels the need to immediately tell the world and set things right. It's this immediacy that so easily leads to crude expression, or an ignoble or inartful means of expression that drives people away. Those who can't understand the technical and specific reasons as to why an individual is so angry can't help but be turned off by the expression of this emotion, and in fact view it as a red flag, something resulting from a psychological imbalance, or any number of the explanations offered by those bespectacled psychologists and intellectuals so often trotted out in popular culture to explain away all far-right thinking, as if it were a result of faulty upbringing or poor potty training as a child, or something equally absurd. To communicate anything clearly and effectively, and truly manifest change in the hearts and minds of others, we're forced to take several steps back and regain composure, and make use of the full force of whatever abilities we've been blessed with, and whatever knowledge base and context picture we currently have, to present the most compelling possible case. This is an extremely difficult uphill battle, as these subversives have essentially planted landmines in the heads of the masses, causing certain words and concepts to be red flags that cause them to shut down or reject the message. And this is further magnified when the tone of the person speaking to them is angry, emotional, scattered, or flustered. This is why so much effort is spent by these subversive elements to demoralize and anger and enrage. They know it works, and it works wonders. There's a quote from one of Dostoevsky's letters to a relative that struck me and has always stayed with me. The topic being discussed was gambling, so I can't be certain how he intended it to be meant, but I can't help but suspect that, as with nearly everything the man wrote, it had a larger and more profound meaning and seed of truth than one might suspect at first glance. Quote, "Please don't think I am so pleased with myself for not losing that I am showing off when I say that I know the secret of how not to lose but to win. I really do know the secret. It is terribly silly and simple, and consists of keeping one's head the whole time, whatever the state of the game, and not getting excited. That is all. And it makes losing simply impossible, and winning a certainty. But that is not the point. The point is whether, having grasped the secret, a man knows how to make use of it, and is fit to do so. A man can be as wise as Solomon and have an iron character, and still be carried away." I think most of you truly know that truth is on our side, and can see clearly just how it's been so buried and obfuscated over the recent decades. So my hope is that we can start communicating accordingly. Calmness and confidence is needed. A dispassionate stepping back, taking a breath, and striving to formulate our ideas and arguments in the most efficient and effective manner possible. Think of this process as the crafting of weapons. You wouldn't want to rush into battle with a brittle and poorly made sword, or arrows that don't fly straight, merely because you'd arrive on the field a bit earlier. You'd instead likely take your time to assure all was in good order before marching off to war. And even when feeling the passionate anger, you'd forcibly hold yourself back, precisely because the battle was so important and so much was at stake. This can be counterintuitive. The impulse is to strike out immediately, against all we know to be false, manipulative, deceptive, and malevolent. But if we truly want to destroy this hydra, we can't be flailing at the many heads with poor equipment, hoping against hope that we strike a killing blow. We need to craft deadly weapons, and we need to wield them while standing on firm foundations, and we need to aim for the heart. When one strives to govern themselves and their actions, insofar as they're able, with nobility and magnanimity, the world responds accordingly. Those able to consistently act as higher beings are soon recognized as higher beings, to put it bluntly. Our time window is swiftly disappearing. We no longer have the luxury of flailing wildly or tilting at windmills. Pay attention to Kipling when he uses the wording, quote, "They were not easily moved. They were icy, willing to wait." Or, "Their voices were even and low. Their eyes were level and straight. There was neither sign nor show." Here was a man who understood the Saxon and his wiring, and those towering traditions, traits, and tendencies once possessed by our forebears, before we allowed ourselves to be confused and tangled up within these foreign bonds. Here was a man who understood the soul of the Arya, from whence his power derives. It's power that comes from allying with nature, with justice, with a genuine desire to create a world that works best for all involved, with hierarchies based on merit, with leadership seen as the most daunting of fatherly responsibilities, with eyes focused upward and onward, never downcast, never stooping to fight in the mud, with a profound distaste for the small and mean and petty. All of this is still extant within us. We've merely forgotten this genetic and cultural gift, allowed it to slumber. This is what we need to rediscover and embrace. Thanks for listening.